Hey guys, what's up? Sandu here. So today I'll be testing the little brother of that topping A90 headphone amplifier that forever changed the way that I'm looking at headphone amplifiers. The truth is that A90 competes with the best solid-state headphone amplifiers ever made at any price point. Don't believe me? No problem, try it for yourself. But when you do that, just forget where it was made. So the little L30 that I'll be testing today also uses nested feedback topology, but instead of using 4 TPA op-amps in a full balanced configuration, it uses only 2 of them for a single-ended output. Price dropped a lot though, so it can be had for $140, so definitely a very affordable unit. But let me check if it delivers in terms of sound performance. In terms of design, simply put, L30 follows the same footprints of their E30 DAC, so it has absolutely the same case, same weight and shape. I personally find it good looking, and since it's about the same size of an external 2.5-inch HDD drive, you can integrate it even in a Mickey Mouse hi-fi setup. You can't really go smaller than this, and if desktop space is important to you, it should fit those requirements really well. As with the other units, there isn't a single visible screw on any side. They moved all those on the back for a much cleaner and minimalist look. As for controls, L30 is a simple and straightforward device. On its front panel you can spot a preamp, headphone amp or off switch, a gain switch with 3 positions. There is also a single quarter-inch headphone jack and a volume wheel on the right. It's a single-ended unit, so no XLR jacks on the front or on the back plate. On the back there is a single RCA input, and since it can also work as a preamp, there is also an RCA output as well. I see a 50-volt DC input as well, meaning that it can work separately with the P50 power supply, just in case you'll want to level up it to the maximum potential. In terms of technology, before I tell you about the L30, I want to have your attention on that enormous external power supply. Imagine my reaction when I have opened that heavy-duty external power supply and a huge laminated core single-phase transformer were sitting in there. That is right, folks, no BS switching power supplies in here, no cutting corners, and that makes me extremely happy. Probably the most important thing to know is that L30 uses absolutely the same nested feedback composite amplifier topology of its bigger brother A90. As I have explained in my A90 review, it exhibits a higher gain, higher slew rates, and much lower distortion. Since it uses half the components, output power was halved as well, but at 3.5 watts in 16 ohms and about 280 milliwatts in 300 ohms, plus a voltage swing of 26 volts peak to peak, L30 feels more like a Goliath than like a David to me. Output impedance is impressively low at just 0.1 ohms. You can be sure that damping factor is unaffected at all, and you can basically drive the highest sensitivity IEMs with great results. In terms of sound performance, I'm having basically the same impressions that I had about the topping A90, about the benchmark HPA4, about that Sparkos Lab series. So L30 is simply a colorless type of headphone amplifier that is not adding anything into the mix and also doesn't subtract anything from there as well. All those entry-level THX amplifiers are more or less the same sounding, with the exception that all those are less emotional sounding with a drier mid-range somehow, but NFCA amps like this one and the A90 are more natural sounding, especially the mid-range feels fuller sounding, and this simply are closer to the real thing. So I've grown up listening to a lot of records of my father, like Beatles, Scorpions, Deep Purple, Queen, and I've listened to all those for hundreds and hundreds of times. And if there would be a small deviation from linearity, a small deviation in their tonality, I would spot that right away. And the bottom line is that L30 simply follows the footsteps of that A90 headphone amplifier by sounding super clean, but not leaning towards that clinical side. So it's still natural and engaging sounding, unlike those entry-level THX amplifiers. I'm actually quite surprised by the sound of the little fellow. The craziest part is that the absolute transparency and detail retrieval is at the highest level possible in this one. I'm very serious about this, so it will put on the plate everything is there to hear, so all the good and all the bad, and I've thrown everything at this one, so ultra sensitive IEMs, portable headphones, desktop planars, you name it. And L30 always sounded super snappy, engaging in a very clean and transparent way. So yes, I've toy tapped with this one, yes, I've smiled listening to the old rock tunes of my pops. The magic is still in here, and I'm quite surprised that I'm hearing all this at the price of an entry-level interconnect cable. I will slightly alter my reviewing process, as I want to mention all the bad parts before moving forward. And when you put L30 lifting heaviest loads like Odyssey LCD4 or Hi-Fi Man area, then I'm here to say that it will sound good, but it will not sound great. And power output and power storing in those electrolytic amps is basically the culprit in here. So there are a few older albums with a very high dynamic range, like the first Beatles albums, Deep Purple albums, Soto Blue by Abdullah Ibrahim is a very good example. With such recordings I was maxed out on the volume wheel, even on the high gain, and yet I wanted just a little bit more volume. Do note that I fed a stronger signal to this one, so Matrix Audio Element X is outputting 2.3 volts instead of the standard 2 volt on the RCA out, and yet I wanted to increase even more the volume because it was already maxed out. With all that said, the rest of the gang, like Kennerton Wodan, like Focal Clear, Quadira 1, RZH Phobos, were driven mostly to their maximum potential. They sounded exactly like they did on the single-ended output of the topping A90. So those didn't need more than 12 o'clock position on the volume wheel, even on the medium gain settings. So L30 is more than capable of driving high-end planars. And if you are wondering if L30 will drive high impedance dynamic headphones, you shouldn't, as L30 will simply slap those membranes until they turn red. Resolution is the second name of this amplifier, and transparency its surname, and when it comes to things like this, you can't get better than this. So I'm going as far and say that the little L30 is a little bit more transparent and detailed than both SMSL SP200 and Drop THX 789. And if you care for the smallest details in your music, for the smallest nuances, for that ultimate transparency, then L30 will simply offer them to you until everything else sounds muddy by comparison. So L30 is simply an achromatic sounding amplifier, so it's very extended in the frequency response. It's super linear top to bottom, nothing really stands out, and yet everything is exactly at its right place. Since bass and mid-range are not elevated at all, it might sound like a boring amplifier at first, but the more I listened to it, the more I started appreciating its honesty and its uncolored sound. It's still the sole reason I'm using daily that benchmark HP for, right? So please don't confuse ultimate transparency, a super linear sound, a super detailed sound, with boring, bright, harsh or soulless sounding, because that is not the case in here. So bright and clinical sounding is one thing, but not staying in front of your music is something else, my friends. In terms of noise floor, I have a feeling that I have already listened to this one multiple times. Oh wait, that is because it sounds exactly like a single-ended Topic A90, and now it makes sense. You know that cause and effect diagram, I think it works with audio too. So the lowest possible noise floor was actually the cause, and the see-through transparency that followed is the effect. And I have already mentioned an immaculate resolution and transparency that even expensive amplifiers will envy about. And now it's time to check what is causing that. Topic measured its noise floor at about 0.9 microvolts on the high gain and 0.7 microvolts on the low and on the mid gain. Now you should know that the AP555X audio analyzer is also adding a little bit of noise from itself, so the actual measurements is actually lower than that. As a small detour, my $3,000 benchmark HPA4 has the noise floor of 2.4 microvolts. Do I need to tell you more about the noise floor of this one? Simply put, I cannot differentiate both of them in terms of noise floor, so they both are sounding super transparent, super clean, And the only limiting factor is actually our hearing abilities and not the gear that I'm testing today. And as you can imagine, any IEMs that I have tried, be it Mesa Penta or Fire FA9 or FA7, worked as a charm with the little guy. So I didn't spot any hums, any noises, any hissing, nothing like that. Just a pitch black performance on any gain positions and also on any volume level. L30 is simply an extremely IEM happy amplifier. It works as magic with all of them. And I don't see a point of buying a more expensive amplifier for your IEMs. So due to its close to zero impedance and also inaudible noise floor, you will be basically testing the limits of your IEMs. As for the transient response, L30 is simply a speedy sounding amplifier, and that is a natural phenomenon when you take the noise out of the picture and nothing stays in front of the audio signal. L30 can also be considered as a sleeper type of headphone amplifier, so when you look at it, it's small and cute, so you are lowering your expectations, but after pressing play, simply keep your hands on the chair handles, close your eyes, and prepare for a fast ride. L30 is a fast puncher with notes decaying in the same fashion, but don't expect that ultimate slam, that ultimate thump in your eardrums, because for that more brute force and more output power will be needed. And I want to clarify that only with Odyssey LCD4 and also only with Hi-Fi Man area, it was punching less, it was less impactful, less punchy sounding in a way. But everything else, like Kennerton Wodan, like Focal Clear, like Quadra 1, it was punching like a natural boxer, and it was keeping up with demanding music like electronica, for example. All those lazy sounding portables like Mesa 99 Classics, like Sennheiser Momento 2, started running faster as if someone spooked them from behind. So it changed them in a good way, and I'm still spotting the naturalness in those headphones, but the laziness is gone forever. Besides the limited headroom that I've experienced with heavy loads and that weaker slam with high-end planars, the left to right soundstage also did take a hit, but I can explain you why that is happening. So a true balanced DAC will offer a close to zero channel crosstalk on its balanced outputs, on the XLR outputs, and much worse numbers, much bigger channel crosstalk on the RCA output. So the small soundstage that I'm experiencing is not only the fault of the L30, but also of the DAC that feeds it. So of course the damage is not that big, I'm still exaggerating a bit, but it's there, and especially with open back high-end headphones. However, it's far from upfront sounding, it's far from closed-in sounding. There is still plenty of room in there, there is still plenty of air in there, and it's moving left to right and vice versa. As for the frequency response, this will be an easy one and a quickie. So L30 was revealed to me as simply as a wire with gain amplifier, so it was super transparent, with simply a straight as a line sounding in terms of frequency response. So no dips, no rises, no nothing like that. Just a smooth line from sub bass up to the upper treble. So sub bass and mid bass simply rocked my world with blues, with rock, with electronica. I didn't even need to use those test tracks, sweep tones, 20 Hz sweep tones, and things like that, because L30 simply carried bass information from the lowest octaves, and it presented them to me very lightning fast. Mid-range performance is one of the most important aspects, at least for me it is. So if I can't find a natural tone, everything will simply sound bad to me. Those entry-level THX amplifiers are sounding decent in here, but on a more serious note, they lack mid-range presence and warmth. And in this regard, both the A90 and L30 are better, as I'm simply easier carried away by music. Voices are going deeper, string instruments are sounding more natural to me. There is none of that plasticky sound in here. Treble is of course going up and up, it goes past top octave, and there is plenty of information that will be rendered by the little one. L30 is still a wide bandwidth amplifier, exactly like A90, so I have no objections in terms of treble performance. It's clean, it's extended, it's textured and easygoing in the same time. All in all, L30 covers our hearing range in full, and even more, so it simply extends from bottom to top, and that is perfect by my standards. As for the conclusion, I was quite a fan of that Topping A90, more like a big fan, a big fan. I loved it, I raved about it. It was simply almost on the same level with my reference headphone amplifier, but at 6 times cheaper. How could I not be impressed by that unit? So I'm basically having the same feelings about this one. The power dropped in half, that is true. The Soundstage shrinked as well, but at only 140 bucks, it proved its value already multiple times. It worked great with IEMs, it worked great with portables and desktop headphones, and everything I said, almost everything I said about the Topping A90 can be said in here too. It's really that good. Now, considering its performance and its price point, I'm happy to recommend the Topping L30 as a great sounding headphone amplifier. Okay guys, I hope you enjoyed my review. My full in-depth review is waiting on my website. In case you want to support the channel, please subscribe to it, and thank you for doing that. And as usual, listen to my music, be positive, and I'll see you next time. Cheers guys, bye bye.